Good day to everyone. I am Miss Sarah D. Ragos from 1IEB, and I am here to present the evolution of operating system. Evolution of operating system. Here on the screen, you can see my storyboard about its evolution. But before that, let us first have an introduction on what is an operating system is. Operating system. Operating system is a combination of hardware and software. The hardware components of a computer include a monitor, a keyboard, a power supply, hard drives, a motherboard, memory modules, processor, a system fan, and other devices. Operating system is the most important software that runs on a computer. Manages the computer's memory, processes, as well as its software and hardware. This contains of system software or the fundamental files of your computer needs to boot and function. We can say that an operating system is the most important software in a computer. This also provides basic functionality for the device and can be found in every desktop, tablet, and smartphone. Why use an operating system? An operating system brings powerful benefits to the computer software and software development. Without an operating system, every application would need to include its own UI as well as the comprehensive code needed to handle all level functionality of the underlying computers such as disk storage, network interfaces, and so on. Considering the vast array of underlying hardware available, this would vastly bloat the size of every application and make software development impractical. Diagram, it represents a basic structure or component of a computer system so that you can have an idea what operating system does in a computer system. You can see here in the lower level of the diagram, we have the computer hardware. It consists of CPU, memory, input-output devices. Next is the operating system. As you can see in the diagram, the operating system is the interface between the hardware and the user. Above it, we have the system and application programs. There are two kinds of software, which are the system software and application software. System software are used to directly give command to the computer hardware, while the application software are used to perform specific tasks that can be directly used by the user. So overall, we can say that the interface between the hardware and the user is provided by the operating system. Who created the first operating system, and when was it created? The first operating system was created by General Motors in 1956 to run a single IBM central computer. In the 1960s, IBM was the first computer manufacturer to take on the task of developing operating system and began distributing operating systems, including its computers. The first operating systems were developed in the 1950s, when computers could only run one program at a time. Later in the following decades, computers began to include more and more software programs, sometimes called libraries, that came together to create the start of today's operating system. Operating systems. You can see here in my storyboard, there are first generation, second, third, and fourth generations of operating system. So first, we have the first generation. Starts from 1940s to early 1950s. Vacuum tubes and logboards. When electronic computers were first introduced in the 1940s, they were created without any operating system. All programming was done in certain machine language, often by firing off logboards to control the machine's basic functions. During this generation, computers were generally used to solve simple math calculations. Operating systems were not necessarily needed. Next is the second generation, starts from 1955 to 1965, transistors and batch systems. This generation was the time when the first operating system was introduced in the early 1950s. It was called GEMOS and like I said earlier was created by General Motors for IBM's machine, the 701. Operating systems in the 1950s were called single-stream batch processing systems because the data was submitted in groups. The third generation, from 1965 to 1980, integrated circuits and multiprogramming. By the late 1960s, operating systems designers were able to develop the systems of multiprogramming in which a computer program will be able to perform multiple jobs at the same time. It was the introduction of multiprogramming in a major part in development of operating systems because it allowed the CPU to be busy nearly 100% of the time that it was in operation. Another major development during the third generation was the phenomenal growth of minicomputers, starting with the DEC PDP-1 in 1961. The PDP-1 had only 4K of 18-bit words. These microcomputers helped create a whole new industry and the development of more PDPs. These PDPs helped lead to the creation of personal computers which are created in the fourth generation. Lastly, the fourth generation from 1980 to present, personal computers. The fourth generation of operating systems were created for the creation of personal computers. These computers were very similar to the mini-computers developed in the third generation. Personal computers cost a very small fraction of what mini-computers cost. One of the major factors in the creation of personal computing was the birth of Microsoft and the Windows operating system. The Windows operating system was created in 1975 when Paul and Bill Gates had an idea to take up personal computers to a different level. They introduced the MS-DOS in 1981. Although it was effective, it created much difficulty for the people who tried to understand its cryptic commands. Windows went on to become the largest operating system used in technology with releases of Windows 95, Windows 98, Windows XP, and their newest operating system. Along with Microsoft, Apple is the other major operating system created in the 1980s. Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple, created the Apple Macintosh, which was a huge success since it was so friendly user. Windows development throughout the years were influenced by the Macintosh and it created strong competition between the two companies. Today, all of our electronic devices run off of operating system, from our computers and smartphones to ATM machines and motor vehicles, and as technology advances, so do operating systems. There are five common operating systems. For personal computers, there are Microsoft Windows. Microsoft Windows has existed in one form or another since 1985, and it remains the most popular operating system for home and office computers. Its latest versions, including Windows 10, are also used on some tablets, and the OS is used on some web and number crunching server computers as well. Computers from a wide variety of manufacturers can use Windows. Next is the Apple Mac OS. Apple Mac OS, successor to the popular OS X operating system, runs on Apple laptops and desktops, based in part on the historic family of Unix operating systems dating back to research in the 1960s at AT&T's Bell Labs. Mac OS shares some features with other Unix-related operating systems, including Linux. While the graphical interfaces are different, many of the underlying programming interfaces and command line features are the same. Next, for personal computers is Linux. Linux is a family of open source operating systems, which means they can be modified and distributed by anyone around the world. This is different from the proprietary software like Windows, which can only be modified by the company that owns it. The advantages of Linux are that it is free, and there are many different distributions or versions you can choose from. As for mobile devices, there are Apple iOS, on Apple hardware including iPhones, tablet, iPad tablets, and iPod Touch media players. Signature features of iOS includes the App Store where users buy apps and download free software, an emphasis on security including strong encryption to limit with what unauthorized users can extract from the phone, and a simple streamlined interface and minimal hardware buttons. Next, for mobile devices is the Google's Android OS. Android is the most popular operating system in the world, judging by the number of devices installed. Largely developed by Google, it's chiefly used on smartphones and tablets. Unlike iOS, it can be used on devices made by a variety of different manufacturers, and those makers can tweak parts of its interface to suit their own needs. Users can download custom versions of the operating system because large portions of it are open source, meaning anyone can legally modify it and publish their own. However, most people prefer to stick with the version that comes on their device. So, what are the most popular operating systems? In the desktop world, Microsoft Windows is the most installed operating system and controls 82% of desktops. Apple's macOS is installed on 30% of computers. The rest of the 5% is shared among various operating systems, including Linux. According to global data collected by StatCounter, Android is the most popular operating system in the world, with 40% of the world's devices powered by Android. To be exact, Android, Windows, iOS, OS X, and Linux are the top 5 most popular operating systems in the world, with 39.5, 36.4, 13.1, and 5.8% and less than 1% respectively. Thank you, and that's all for the evolution of operating system.